All right. Sorry for being a little bit tardy. And Chris will be out this week, so you guys will just be riding solo with me. Hopefully I can handle both roles well enough. Let's see. Let me get the rock fan on first before we go any further. All right, and we appear to be live over there. So got a good amount of stuff that I want to get to. So let's go on ahead and get this party started.
You are here because you have a question. Really get down to understanding this political matrix.
Out there, the stunt double. He walked out. He's got an oximeter on his back. I'm like, you gotta keep this other. Marcus said on his other show. He was like, American politics is simply pro wrestling.
You became afraid of everyone because people were reporting on each other.
We're living out Minority Report too as well. And you know why? You know why we know that, boss? Because we've been reporting on it. Yeah, I know.
All the black people in this country be willing to take a reservation.
That's what the Nation of Islam was asking for.
Put a couple of clips together.
It's crazy to see how much Martin Luther King really began to look like, damn, man, Malcolm was fucking right.
I mean, what is the elite's end game?
There's this assumption that as a black commentator or black journalist that you're not informed.
Relationships, that's a skill we have to learn.
It's even more kind of mind-blowing because we're supposed to be the multicultural space.
Trying to drum up money to keep the war machine going so they can keep the donors happy.
Yeah. Do the Chinese own part of that?
Began a long time ago. Ukraine has had a neo-Nazi problem for decades.
Proof of sanction, am I right?
I don't know if Domcopters will do it, but something's got to be able to save the world.
From the private industry here.
Like I say, people come on here, they can say stuff they don't normally say on their own shows, which is fine.
Oh, it's McDonald's. Whoop-de-doo.
Ooh.
And their cholesterol is going to go down. Yeah, good.
Look, we only exist because we have the biggest military, kid.
And silencing a person like Julian Assange. Because it affects everybody. And today, last week, believe you me, because they know who you are. They watch. They got people that's going out there. They don't want you guys having the conversations that you're having on this show. Mm-hmm. So it affects the political matrix today.
All right, the screen is catching up with me. It's not cooperating. I got lucky that it's able to switch back and forth all the stuff that I'm getting uploaded onto the screen. But yes, Chris will be out this week. What happened to Chris again? Wasn't paying attention. No, Chris, actually for Father's Day weekend, he got whisked away for a little surprise trip. So, good for him. Hopefully he's there enjoying. So I will be taking care of it. And shout out to all those fathers out there, whether you're a biological father, whether you are a stepfather, whether you are just a father in the community who takes care of, and of course, the Father which created us all. Definitely happy Father's Day weekend. Will also be the topics that we'll be getting into tonight. Some of them will kind of be a little bit interwoven, and some of them will kind of tackle on the backs of some of the topics that we talked about the week before. Trip to Las Vegas. If he's out here on the West Coast, I'd be upset with if you don't let me know. But we will be getting into a little bit of AI. I saw a very interesting segment that dovetailed just into a lot of different things, which I've been researching on, which I see other channels, which I follow and I would say even use some of them for a little bit of research and to digging into different things. So Definitely some stuff I wanted to get into. We're going to talk a little bit about Juneteenth. I think I want to go at it. I want to share a video that often tackles an angle of the whole Juneteenth thing, which I don't think a lot of people think about. And I'm not going to be necessarily doing a stream for Juneteenth, but I will be going out and joining some of the festivities, and I'll be uploading that onto the other channel, Been Thinking with Young Morpheus. So make sure you guys check that out. Hopefully I won't have to do much editing. I can just upload it plain and clear, and get that up as fast as possible tomorrow. Antartica. That's right. We got Antartica and we got Cyberattacks on the menu to talk about. So that's what I have on the plate. Have you seen Dr. Shiva's recent video? I saw it. I don't know how to comment really much on it. I mean, I kind of overall, I agree with, I'm not saying that I disagree with Dr. Shiva on what he's talking about there. I just kind of stay with the overall, yeah, I agree, but I don't really get into the deep weeds as far as a Dr. Shiva does. He is a doctor, so of course he's going to be able to speak more eloquently on the topic than I ever could. Yeah, I think it kind of goes to, he's just kind of confirming a lot of theories which people have had over the last couple of years, dealing with the plague. Let's see, what else do we have in here? Did anyone catch the disclosure projects? No, I didn't. Yes, please send that to me, and I'll definitely get into it. I got a couple of news stories also that I wanted to get into. I don't know. A lot of times I don't have the time to do my little news rundown, but when I get the chance, I do like to do it. So I will go into that just a little bit. But I'm going to say the Antarctica, you guys are going to have to wait on that one a little bit. But it is definitely interesting. Jared says Antarctica secret Nazi base. No, not going down that road tonight. But I mean, I might throw out some of the, for people who are not familiar with what she's talking about, I might go into just talking about the theories and where they come from a little bit. I don't know, maybe not. Depends on how much time I have. I'm kind of on a limited schedule tonight. I have a hard out that I have to be at because I'm going to support a friend who does some DJing out here in the local area. So I'm actually going to get out of the house a little bit. Wonder what you guys are talking about. Yipper says Thomas, Oklahoma. I saw your video about Ice Cube. Why is it pre or post Columbus that counts if someone native or not? That's my question to him. I don't know. As I've been getting, now that I've been on TikTok a lot more, I see there is a lot of back and forth between the Abo community and Native Americans or indigenous community, or I don't even know how to say it to not get people confused, because there's so much back and forth going on about it, and I have questions that I would ask the Abo community in general. But that's not the topic I want to get into at this time. If we have time later, I might get into it. Chris H says, I saw the bits on aliens on Redacted. Was a time I would have believed them, but I'm wondering they went after Snowden and Manning for less than space aliens. I honestly don't buy the space aliens thing. I think it's more of a psyop than anything. I think not only a psyop to us average individuals, I think it's a psyop to other countries also, where the U.S. government is trying to, in a roundabout way, trying to make their population focus on this, to supposedly put pressure on the governments for them to look towards unity and oneness and team building than the current situations that are going on. I mean, and I believe the motivation that they would have for that is, excuse me, we do still have the situation where the U.S., though on paper they support the one China policy, their actions have been going against the one China policy, as in, sending weapons and aid to Taiwan and almost dealing with Taiwan if they're a separate entity in their own sovereign state outside of China. And we all know that's all about the semiconductors. But, I wonder if that has something to do with it. Also, I think that it helps to kind of take some steam off of what's been going on with Ukraine and Russia. And I think that they would kind of just like to change the subject just a little bit on some of those things. So that's my thoughts on it. I hope you have Dr. Shiva on. Well, I'd love to have Dr. Shiva on if he's so inclined to come on my piddly little platform. I invite all kinds of people. But I do keep in mind that some of the people which I try to invite on are larger names, and therefore they are getting flooded with inquiries from a bunch of different people. So I don't expect for them to necessarily get back to me right away. I will put them out there as always, as you guys always request. But I can't make any promises because it's going to take from them on the other side to one read that I sent it to them, and then decide that they can do it or if they have the time for it. So that's my thoughts on that. Yeah, I mean, I just think that this is more of a psyop than anything. Now, I'm not saying that they're not seeing things flying around in the air that they can't explain, but when they start telling me that we got pictures of aliens walking around and, oh, well, no, I don't buy it. That when they're telling me that they have the crafts, I don't buy it. I mean, I just don't buy any of that. I believe they are seeing things out there. And that'll dovetail into some of my later topics that I want to get into. But let's get started with one of the first stories I wanted to talk about on the news rundown. Which is it? I'll start off with this story because this story was kind of more in my wheelhouse, kind of like an X-Files type or Fringe type story. Goodness, no. What is that? I don't want that. I don't know if you all heard about this story. Ecuadorian woman who, let me switch that. Put myself in there. Switch, make it there. Okay, that way you guys can see. Ecuadorian woman who revived during her wake is dead after a week in intensive care at the hospital. For those who missed this, a 76-year-old woman who had been declared dead and surprised her relatives by knocking on her coffin from the inside during her wake earlier this month has died after 7 days in intensive care, her family said Saturday. So we actually have those rising from the dead. And this woman rose, like, literally, I mean, she'd been declared dead for days. And, went to the morgue and all that stuff like that. And now, boom, she pops up knocking on the coffin, still alive. I don't know how that exactly happened, but, kind of crazy story. Says woman declared dead twice. Woman who woke up at her own wake has now officially died. So I don't know, just a quick, interesting, kind of unusual story that I wanted to dive in. Well, not really dive into, but just talk about it. Marcus is pretty cool in that. It's not about aliens per se, but what the black is of ops are doing. I agree with you there. I definitely agree with you there. Let's stop that story and let's put up my next story that I have in mind that I wanted to talk about. This was interesting news because I thought a lot of this stuff had already been settled. Says Germany will pay Holocaust survivors across the world over $1 billion in 2024. Germany will pay Holocaust survivors over $1.4 billion next year, which will go toward one-time payment for survivors and welfare programs. The Conference on Jewish Material Claims Agency claims against Germany announced the compensation on Tuesday in a press release after meeting the German Federal Ministry of Finance. The conference, which represents Holocaust survivors, stated that $1.4 billion will go towards direct compensation and social welfare programs for the survivors. Outcomes from the meeting include $888.9 million in total funding will go towards home care services, with additional $105.2 million going towards survivors' increased needs. One-time payment each year until 2027 towards the then 128,000 recipients of hardship fund. Survivors will receive $1,200 or $1,365 in U.S. currency per person for 2024, $1,300, which is 1,300 euros, which is 1,400 basically in U.S. currency for 2025, and then roughly 1,475 in U.S. currency for 2026, and about 1,500 in 2027. I just thought that was kind of interesting because, as far as I knew, I thought all that stuff had been settled, but I guess they're still paying out for the Holocaust, which is kind of interesting. Can't get reparations here in America, but that's still being done. But just wanted to put that out there. C. Gipper says, but Germany won't pay for what they did and continue to do to Africa. Yep, they won't pay. Neither will France. Neither will the U.S. None of these European countries want to pay reparations to anybody who it seems like has melanin in their skin. What's going on with the military drills? I would say what's going on with the military drills is things are ratcheting up more and more between some of these conflicts, and I think that they are just getting ducks in a row. I want to see if I can find that one story I heard briefly, though I did not put this in the docket to talk about. I did hear about this and was like, whoa, wait. Let's see. Was it? I think they said this was Ukraine. Let's see, news. Where's that story? Yes, that's what it was. So it says on this other story. Let me put it on the screen so you all can see. Share screen. So this was a very interesting story. I don't know how this got under the radar. So, slow down. Says a look at uranium-based ammo the UK will send to Ukraine. So now they're sending uranium. I think it's spent uranium, but still not good. Okay, the story says Russia threatened to escalate attacks in Ukraine after the British government announced it would provide to Ukraine a type of munition that Moscow falsely claims has nuclear component. Okay, yeah, we'll see. The British Defense Ministry on Monday confirmed it will provide Ukraine with armor-piercing rounds containing depleted uranium. Such rounds were developed by the U.S. during the Cold War to destroy Soviet tanks, including the same T-72 tanks that Ukraine now faces in its push to break through a stalemate in the east. Depleted uranium is a byproduct of uranium enrichment process needed to create nuclear weapons. The rounds contain some radioactive properties, but they can't generate a nuclear reaction like a nuclear weapon would. RAND nuclear expert and policy researcher Edward Geis said. That didn't stop the Russians from offering a full-throated warning that the rounds were opening the door to further escalation. In the past, they've suggested the war could escalate to nuclear weapons use, which I have heard about Russia moving tactical nukes closer to the Ukrainian border for possible discharging usage. I would understand that this could be a reason why we might be hearing stories like that. For those who, and for people out there that will listen to this and say, well, why is it a big deal that they're going to ship Ukrainians weapons that have depleted uranium? Because for one, that depleted uranium is horrible for the environment. For two, not only would it do damage necessarily to those troops, let me stop that off the screen. Not only would it do damage to those tanks or those troops, but that depleted uranium can poison the soil, the water, animals, all kind of stuff. It's not necessarily about it just being a nuclear bomb. It's about it literally destroying the environment of that country. And when some people use the term that they're going to fight it down to the last Ukrainian, it seems like they're going a step further than that. They want to fight it down to the last Ukrainian and the last Ukrainian living thing in the area to almost make it, it seems like possibly uninhabitable after that. Yes, I have heard Russia talk about using tactical nukes in that area, which tactical nukes definitely would do a lot of damage. And it seems like this is only continual escalation that we're seeing. So I don't know. I think a lot of these things to distract from what's going on over there. I would assume that Ukraine is probably faring a lot worse because the mainstream media is pushing away from talking about things over there and focusing on UFOs and aliens and all kind of other stuff. Let's see. Let me hop over to the rocket. I haven't checked over there yet. See what's up to everybody on that side. See, Gregory is in the building. What's up, Gregory? Hemcar looks like mRNA and well, good thing I don't eat ham or bacon, and you guys probably shouldn't either. But a story saying that there might be. Let me pull this up. Sensitivity rising challenge. Let's see, what do you got here? Combat current future swine diseases with sensitivity and Merck animal health. Oh, that sounds kind of crazy. Oh shoot, that's right. Let me get back to that. When it comes to alien psyops, do you think the technology is real masquerading as ET? Gregory, to be honest, I don't believe it's ET as in an actual alien species. I hold to the position, and I'll hold 10 toes down on it, that these are angelic beings, more than likely, that we're seeing. Or if by that percentage of chance, which I'm wrong, that it is some type of aliens, I do not believe that they have the ability to stop them. I believe if they've had the ability to somehow fly all over the universe to make it here, I doubt that they're struggling to evade capture here in the US. I highly doubt that they're running out of fuel or crashing or any of that stuff. Also, I don't get why they would necessarily, like when they show these aliens pictures. Well, for one, I would imagine that they would have to have some kind of suit, because if they're living within any of these planets within this galaxy, the oxygen levels are different. And I imagine that any creature that will be living on any of these so-called planets if they're living on there, then their biology would have to be in sync with that planet's oxygen levels. I don't think you can just go to a whole different planet and just breathe, different levels of air. I mean, some of these planets, it's so different in the air quality that us breathing it would literally be toxic. So that right there is, I don't know what's really going on with some of this stuff. That's the reason why I say I think it's a psyop. Let's see what else. Yeah, exactly. Good thing they grow all the wheat in Ukraine. I'm sure depleting uranium won't poison the earth. Heard Congress cut the bill to label what country our foods come from. They try to, but when it comes down to it, they're going to go and get the food from wherever they need to get the food from, and it's not going to be necessarily. They're not going to be so hung up on which country. I mean, if there's a country that has it that they don't have an embargo on, or they don't have some kind of trade war, they're going to be, doing it. And that's something interesting you brought up there, Atris. A bunch of footage. I saw some helicopters near Vandenberg Air Force Base earlier today, but pretty normal. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's going to be some training stuff. Also with these crafts and things, whether they are actually an alien technology or out of this world technology. The one common thing that you'll typically see is that they tend to be around military installations. Why are they around American installations? Often around ones with nuclear capability, or at least nuclear research. That almost sounds like to me what you would do with a enemy, that you would be trying to scout them out and try to figure out capabilities. So that's something that just goes through the back of my mind. See Tammy in here also. Hello, Tammy. Let's see. Thomas says Earth has wicked bacteria and viruses. It took hundreds of thousands of years for humans to build immunity. Could aliens build immunity? I don't think they are. That would just be my thoughts. Let's see. Let's get, what other stories that I have in here that I want to hit before we get into everything? Oh yeah, that's the other story I wanted to touch on. Just a little interesting rundown before we get busy. So this one caught my attention also. It says rare earthquake damages French homes, schools, and churches. Around 170 people have been relocated from the western French town of La Lagrange. I don't know how to say that at all. After an earthquake on Friday evening, the quake. Sorry, getting tongue tied. Maybe I need to sit. The quake, believed to have been magnitude 5.2 and a 5.8, was felt from Rennes in the north to Bordeaux in the southwest. Homes, schools, and churches were damaged, and hundreds of buildings declared uninhabitable. Earthquakes moved magnitude 5 are unusual in France, with the last affecting the country in November 2019. 2 people were injured in the towns of Duc Severez. I don't know. I'm not an expert in French. Following Friday's tremor, and we'll leave it at that. I'm not trying to struggle with any more of these French towns names, but I just thought it was interesting that they were having earthquakes in France. They hadn't really had any, especially of that size, in going on 4 years. So I don't know, just some interesting things. Whew. It's weird. I got sleep, but I am yawning like crazy. All right. Let's see what you have here, Chris. Says a former agent on Redacted said real aliens are made of pure energy. The fake aliens are made of the ones we hear about. The FBI agent who for the X-Files based on. Interesting. Like a Fox Mulder type guy. Cool. Yeah, but I don't believe I believe if they have any kind of alien stuff, it is because this is I believe like they might have snapped a picture of something they saw, which they were allowed to see. I don't think that anything that we're seeing is accurate or correct. You're already getting ahead of me, Baba. I'll get there. Let me star your comment for now, and we'll get to it in a minute. So let's get on to the first topic that I had. Since Juneteenth is upon us, I do want to go into a little bit of history real quick, and I ran across a couple of good videos that can explain and talk about this better than myself. Which I do know a good deal of history, but I feel like some people maybe they're better at saying it and spelling things out than I am. So, got two videos for you all. Let me just put these on the screen. And I know some of you guys are going to know this information, but I just want to. Some of you guys are going to know this information, but I want to put it out there for anybody who is new to catching this or they run across this for the first time, that they can have some of this information. Especially since we have certain school districts like Florida and especially Texas who are trying to strip this information away. Check this out. I got this one and I got a shorter video afterwards.
Thought that slaves in Confederate states were freed when Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on September 22, 1862. While true, the reality of actually freeing those slaves was far more complicated. Today, we're going to take a look at what actually happened on plantations when the slaves were freed. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel. After that, please leave a comment and let us know what other topics you would like to hear about. Okay, so let's head back to the days after the Civil War. You would think that once freed, the slaves would get off the plantations as fast as humanly possible. But in his autobiography, Booker T. Washington mentioned that many ex-slaves, especially older ones, decided to stay. Although free, these ex-slaves typically made deals with their former masters to work for pay. According to Washington, one by one, the older slaves began to wander from the slave quarters back to the big house to have a whispered conversation with their former owners as to the future. Thomas Rutling was only 9 when he and his fellow slaves learned of their emancipation. He thought freedom would mean his family would now live a life like their former master, but instead, the family chose to stay on the plantation another 2 years. Rutledge, along with his brother and sister, finally left the plantation in 1865. They went to live with a family in Nashville. He later attended the Fisk Free Colored School, which eventually became Fisk University. In her 1909 book, Memories of Childhood Slavery Days, ex-slave Annie L. Burton wrote of her own experiences with emancipation. Annie recalled that when the news reached the Alabama plantation she worked on, every slave who wasn't feeble or sickly left immediately. Some of these younger, healthier ex-slaves even immediately joined the Union Army. However, because their mother had run away, Annie and her younger sisters stayed behind under the care of their mistress. This may not have been the act of charity it appears to be. This same mistress tried to talk her husband into not telling the slaves about their freedom, and then made the feeble and sickly slaves who remained on the plantation work the fields. After the crops were planted, some plantation owners asked their ex-slaves to sign contracts guaranteeing they would work the crops until January. They would then be divided at the fall harvest for payment. Such a deal is mentioned in the Reverend Irving E. Lowry's 1911 book, Life on the Old Plantation in Antebellum Days, or A Story Based on Facts. Lowry said his ex-master tried to convince the slaves to sign the deals by making a long speech in which he reminded them that he wasn't a bad guy. The plantation owner pointed out that he never put an overseer over them, never employed bloodhounds, and never separated a mother from her child, nor a husband from his wife. He also told them that they were welcome to stay on his plantation as long as they'd like, and that any mistreatment they had experienced off the plantation was their own fault and not his. Although that argument might sound meager to us, all but one ex-slave signed the contract. Charles Hayes owned a plantation 16 miles north of Louisville, Kentucky. Like many slave owners, Hayes at first chose not to tell his slaves about emancipation at all. However, after a few days, he relented out of fear of being arrested. According to ex-slave Harry Smith in his 1891 book, 50 Years of Slavery in the United States of America, Hayes broke the news by saying, "I am about to tell you something I never expected to be obliged to tell you in my life. It is this: one and all, women, men, and children, belonging to me, you are free to go where you please." Smith also noted that at the same time, Hayes was cursing Lincoln's name and exclaiming that if Lincoln were there, he'd kill him for taking his slaves away. However, after Hayes cooled down, he gave the entire plantation access to his whiskey stash and threw what sounds like a pretty decent party. It was described as a great jubilee in which the ex-master and all the ex-slaves got drunk together. Smith recalls that everyone was cheering Abraham Lincoln, but Hayes was way too drunk to notice. By nightfall, the revelers had broken into song and dance and kept it up until morning. According to the Civil War diary of James T. Ayers, Charles Hayes was far from being the only master who tried to hide the news of emancipation from his slaves. Ayers was a Union recruiter who went into the South to enlist newly freed men into the Union Army. Things being as they were, he also often found himself as the person to inform the ex-slaves that they were, in fact, now free. In his diary entry for May 7, 1864, Ayers recorded spreading the word about emancipation to a group of 4 ex-slaves on a plantation near Huntsville, Alabama. He accomplished this by showing them a broadside that featured an illustration of freed slaves on one side and a 2-sentence version of the Emancipation Proclamation on the other. Ayers states the 4 men agreed to enlist, so he told them to gather their things, and he promised he would protect them. When they were confronted by their ex-master, Ayers drew his revolver, and sounding much like a hero in an action movie, calmly told the man, "I shall not hurt a hair of your head, sir, if you be quiet, but I have come for your slaves, and your slaves I'll have." It is believed that Ayers recruited hundreds of black soldiers to the Union cause and spread the word of emancipation to thousands before his death in September of 1865. According to his 1901 autobiography, Up from Slavery, the first day of freedom at the Virginia plantation where Booker T. Washington was born started with a simple, solemn meeting. The meeting was then followed by a reading of the Emancipation Proclamation by a government official, and the news was initially quite well received by the now former slaves. Washington recalled that the master's entire family had gathered on the veranda of the house. He got the impression that they were sad, not because of the loss of property, but rather because they were, in many ways, very close to some of the ex-slaves, who would now be leaving. He recalled his mother kissing her children while tears of joy ran down her cheeks. According to Washington, for some minutes there was great rejoicing and thanksgiving and wild scenes of ecstasy, but there was no feeling of bitterness. In fact, there was pity among the slaves for our former owners. Once the initial joy passed, however, many of the ex-slaves began to feel anxiety over what freedom would really mean. Washington observed, "The great responsibility of being free, of having charge of themselves, of having to think and plan for themselves and their children, seemed to take possession of them." He noted that some of the slaves were 70 or 80 years old and had no strength with which to earn a living. According to 1908's generously titled Memoirs of Samuel Spotswood Clement relating interesting experiences in days of slavery and freedom, Clement's ex-master, Tasswood Ward, informed him and the other slaves on Ward's plantation of their freedom by reading to them from the newspaper. Spotswood recalled that when Mr. and Mrs. Ward came out of the house, He was holding a newspaper and she was crying. They walked to the front of the steps and he said, "Men and women, you are as free as the birds that fly in the air." Ward then raised the paper and read from it. He informed the ex-slaves that Lee had surrendered to Grant and the Southern Confederacy was at an end. He then offered to pay the men to stay and help reap the crops. The offer was accepted by all but one man. Known only as Uncle Fendel, the man was concerned that the rebels might pick up the fight again and revoke their freedom. There's somebody who's been around the block once or twice. Thomas Almond Ashby was 17 years old when he watched his father inform the family slaves on their Front Royal, Virginia plantation that they were all now free. In his 1914 memoir, The Valley Campaigns, Ashby recalled that his father told the ex-slaves that he had no further control over them, and that in the future he would pay them for their services based on wage rates established by the community. He told them that if they wished to stay in his employ, they could do so as long as they desired, but that if any of them wished to seek out a new home, he wouldn't try to stop them from making a change. The elder Ashby further assured the now freed people that he had nothing but a friendly desire to see them do well and be happy. He also warned them of the altered conditions that freedom would bring, and he urged them to cultivate habits of thrift and industry. He believed hard work would make them useful citizens and earn them self-respect, which is some pretty ironic advice coming from a slave owner. According to Ashby, it took several years before all of the ex-slaves had finally left the plantation. One, a woman known only as Aunt Susan, seemed to take Ashby's advice about thrift to heart. After saving up 3 years' worth of money she earned taking in the wash and doing light work, she was actually able to buy a neat little house in the city. Juneteenth, also known as Emancipation Day or Freedom Day, is an official holiday in the state of Texas and an unofficial American holiday that commemorates June 19, 1865. On that date, Union General Gordon Granger read from the federal proclamation that slavery was over in the state of Texas. While the Emancipation Proclamation had ended slavery in the Confederacy more than 2 years earlier, it took some time for the news to reach all parts of the war-torn states. Granger's proclamation guaranteed absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves. It also declared that the connection between master and slave was officially replaced by that between employer and hired labor. During the late 19th century, Juneteenth was primarily celebrated by the Black community. However, the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s led to a renewed interest in the holiday at a wider level. In January of 1980, it became an official holiday in the state of Texas. And in the 21st century, it has become a widely recognized day to celebrate Black historical achievements and encourage respect and pride in all cultures. So what do you think? How fast or slow do you think that change was? Let us know.
All right, so I'll go into that, man. Some of the stuff, it's still, I don't know, I'm speaking to, of course, our audience who, that don't come from a descendancy of slavery or don't know your history of it, because there are many, especially in the Hispanic community, that don't realize that they went through this also. Many, and many in the Native community who went through this also that don't realize this history. It's and a couple of things which I wanted to dive into and talk about, which they don't really go into very often. It's not just a cut and dry, okay, slaves are free now, boom, let's go. Okay, let's go where? You got to remember, you're freeing people with no money. You're not giving them shelter. You're not really telling them what to do. And also, there is no avenue really set up for what to do, except for typically maybe if they had some family which had already bought themselves out of slavery, who had already ran and set up a place somewhere else. But for those who didn't have any family, who were already freed or didn't have some kind of avenue of what to do next, it left many with a very confused state on, like, what do I do? What do I do now? Which you did have a lot of people where And every plantation was different. You had some plantations which were extremely brutal and horrific, and it's like, I'll just be happy to get the hell out of here. I'll live in the swamps. I don't care what I got to do to get away from here. Then you had some where it was a lot of manipulation going on. And then you had some where it wasn't particularly brutal physically, but it could have been mentally demeaning. And it was, you're being exploited. And then you have that mix of people where they might want to run or go somewhere else, but they're too elderly to be able to start out a lot of things on their own from scratch. And so they're kind of left in a weird predicament. Then you have those where they're just been too damaged from what they've experienced there on the plantation and to know a different life. I mean, it's the same thing where you see some people who have been incarcerated so long that when their date for them to get out, they don't really know what to do. They might do another crime and then stay back in there because it's easier for them because now they've gotten so mentally accustomed to living in this state. My grandparents, I mean, even literally, I'm not talking about like greats. I'm talking about even my grandparents. They had to drop out of school early. I'm talking about on my mom's side specifically. They had to drop out of school to go back and help with the farm because they were sharecroppers. And that's what a lot of people did after slavery because they couldn't afford to buy any land because they didn't have any money. What they did is they worked out a contract to work on the plantation, which their parents or ancestors before were slaves on that slave plantation. So they worked the land basically for free to be able to have a place to stay, which just kind of basically was a different form of slavery in a sense. Then you had the sharecropping system where many of those people they would just hike the taxes higher and higher on them so they never can get out from under the plantation owners. So there's a lot of minutia to what was going on in that time period, and it's not easily explained by saying, well, this person did this or they would have did that. It was a lot of extenuating circumstances. There were people who maybe your father and brother on this one plantation, which was extremely brutal, and the mother went over here to this plantation, which they didn't treat her horrible, meaning she didn't have to worry about being, physically assaulted, whether that be sexually or just, violently. So it was a lot that was going on. I mean, I know recently you have a lot of people in the Black community that have focused on the 5 major tribes, Native indigenous tribes, which they took slaves. Well, what about all the other indigenous tribes which helped runaway slaves? What about the ones who helped, take slaves, runaway slaves through native lands to help them escape into Mexico or into Canada? I mean, it's so many different twists and turns and angles to what was going on in that time period. I mean, you had some. I mean, it's a lot. And for me, and I'll explain to you, for me, it was weird when Juneteenth became a national holiday for the fact of it's something my family had celebrated long before I was born. I have a lot of family which have roots in Texas. So, Texas and in some of those southeastern states where it was more, where some of it might have been a little bit more brutal. Some of it of it all, the good, the bad, the ugly. I'm not saying it was necessarily good, but yes, if they even saw you attempt to read, they literally beat you for days. I mean, beat you and then leave you out for days, just weltering in the sun, naked out in front of everybody. Some, you had the buck breaking stuff that would go on. Some places you had the breeding farms. You had the laws which they put into place where when the slave masters were violating the women and getting them pregnant, the mistresses or the wives of the plantation owners would sometimes brutally attack these kids and sometimes kill them. And they made laws against these women having to deal with punishment. Sometimes the wife was the one who was the more brutal one of the slave masters. And I mean, sometimes it was the mother and father. They weren't the ones doing all this egregious stuff, but whenever they were away, their sons and daughters, the younger generation of them. So I mean, it was definitely a difficult time. I mean, you had some plantations where, okay, you ran, okay, we're chopping off your foot. You had some where there was castrations going on. You had some where they let people come in and experiment on their slaves, and so it was a lot. And it's difficult for me a lot of times talking about some of this stuff. Yeah, Baba, there was definitely a level of Stockholm syndrome that went on. And how the information got around, you asked earlier, Atris, is sometimes it was like in one case, this one girl, she was working inside the house. She overheard the husband talking to the wife and talking about, well, should we hide this or not? And she kept it secret. That woman, she heard that and ran that night. And before she ran, she spread word to a couple of slaves right before that. She took off. Then she came back later on and got her daughter out. And so you had cases like that where you had some fleeing instantly. You had some cases where they felt like they were too old. There was nothing that they could do. You had some who had that Stockholm syndrome who listened, because there were some of these slave masters who broke down these speeches to them like, well, I mean, you get out there, you have no shelter, you have no food. What about if you get attacked by wolves or bears or whatever, alligators, all these different animals can attack you out there, with no shelter. Where are you going to go to? What happens if you get sick? You can't go to a doctor because now you're out. And so they would put so much on their mind that, I mean, not everybody got up and left right away. Some of them were like, okay, well, I'm going to leave, but I can't go right now. I got to save some kind of money and try to figure out something. And then just like the case of what led to Juneteenth, how even after that, all that happened and was abolished, that there were still plantation owners who would not tell their slaves. And so what they would do is they would just be a little bit nicer than they were being to them before, or ease up on some of the brutality because they didn't want them to run away, because they knew if they ran away and they couldn't chase them. So I mean, it was a lot that was going on. It's definitely a lot. So I would have been so fearful, wanting for Hammer to drop down, and that's some of them didn't leave because they were worried that if they left and then slavery got reinstituted and they got brought back to that plantation, the slave master was going to be even more brutal on them, and that could result in their deaths. So you had a lot of uncertainty, fear, all that going on. And I mean, if you've been a slave your whole life and you're 60 something years old, and your parents were for 60, 70, 80 years, and then their parents were, you go back in this country at that point for at least a good 200 years of being enslaved. I mean, I can understand the hesitancy to taking off right away. Thank you. I want to hear more about the tribes that helped the slaves. I can give you a good example. For one, the Seminoles. The Seminoles is not an actual tribe. The Seminoles was a mixture of a lot of so-called runaway slaves and natives who paired together to fight back against a lot of stuff that was going on with enslavement and stuff like that, and the stealing of lands. And it became a partnership of, okay, well, you helped us out of slavery, we'll help you protect your lands. and a bond and a unity. And then that did result in, intermingling and generations of I don't want to say mix, that sounds trashy, but ancestry of both having African ancestry and indigenous ancestry mixing and creating, almost like a new tribe in a sense. So you had a lot of that. I mean, I was wearing this gear in particular because this goes back to the Negro Leagues, which a lot of people don't realize. The Negro Leagues, now granted, these are two different. This is the Black Sox, the shirt, the Chicago Black Sox, and this is the Kansas City Monarchs hat. They were Negro League teams, but what a lot of people don't realize about the Negro Leagues is Major League Baseball did not allow Hispanics or Latinos either, nor Native Americans, unless you did have a couple who were so-called white passing. But all the rest played in the Negro Leagues. So that's just a little history a lot of people just don't know about. Yes, the actual date is the 19th, so that would be Monday. Yeah, there's a lot of history there. I mean, it's a lot for everybody to be able to dig into. Not everyone heard on the same. Yeah, not everyone heard on the same day, but the reason why Juneteenth is the 19th is because that is when that's when the Army officially went around to the larger plantations and announced it out to the plantation to the owners of the plantations. Oh, and you are very welcome, Chris. All right. It bothers me. It's not June 19th. It should be clear, not vague. Yeah. Movie Kiki Palmer's Alistair was the slave. Yeah, but that's another good point you brought up, Yipper. That didn't mean that it completely ended chattel slavery. There were still places throughout the whole country where there was still slavery going on, easily documented, some into the 60s. And the latest, there might have been some in the 70s, but I do know definitely for a fact in the 60s. I know they were finding people in Mississippi who were still actual slaves in the 60s. And I think that probably went to some of the people who didn't want to leave right away. And that next generation, once those parents died off, they probably just told them who didn't know any better that, slavery still was a thing. So I don't know. I mean, it's a lot there. But let me check Rockfin before I switch over to the next topic. How can I speak on behalf of slaves? Because I literally have talked to great-grands who talked to literal slaves. I don't think I've spoken on behalf of slaves. I said that I named a bunch of different perspectives, which is researched from reading accounts from slaves. So all I'm doing is reciting what they said of the times and attaching some of it, my feelings on what I would be dealing with. Mischief Brew, I don't know if you have ancestry which goes back to slaves or not, but I don't think it should be too hard for people to figure out if you have ancestors who went through that, what some of their feelings could have been. What aboutism? What are you talking about? I don't even know what you're talking about there. I don't know. To me, it's always telling when somebody gets offended talking about this topic. It gets telling when somebody's getting offended talking about this topic. This is just talking about people being free, and I think I gave disclaimers all the way across, but we'll leave that alone. Thomas says, here, let me put this on the screen. Actually, there were dozens of natives who played in the major leagues long ago. The first native major league player was in 1890. Albert Bender made the Hall of Fame, but they kept most natives out of the league. Yeah, they kept most natives out of the league, but also it was typically only if you were white passing. If you were outwardly proud of your tribe and you spoke, "Hey, I'm from this tribe," a lot of times you would not have been basically admitted into the league. And it's not because of necessarily owners. Some of the owners would have been okay, but many would not have been. That is true. Put this on here. Thank you for backing me up. So the reason you can speak on it, there is a such thing as generational trauma. It literally, I feel anxiety and pain even talking about and seeing this stuff. And I know everybody necessarily doesn't, but it's painful for me talking about it, going into any of this. It's very painful. But I feel like it's something that needs to be done and needs to be talked about. I mean, if you have painful things going on, don't they tell you to go to therapy to talk about it, to get it out? I don't think, and this is one frustration I've had with like certain people, even people who consider to be allies. If your way of us getting past things in America is to let's just shut down other people's history and let's just ignore the pain which their community is going through and things somehow get better, I don't really understand that logic and thinking. I didn't even go into any attacking any other group. I just talked about the feelings of my community. Yes, exactly. It doesn't just go away from the last person whom had the experience of such a horrible experience. It passes down. I mean, my great grandmother, I used to hear horrific stuff from her. I mean, keep in mind, you're talking to somebody who not only talked to people who were actual slaves. My grandparents were the children of people who, out of Tulsa or Greenville, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street, directly. If Black Wall Street didn't happen, they would have probably been raised in Tulsa instead, but got pushed out of that area due to it. My grandmother, a lot of her records and stuff can't be found because it doesn't trace back past what happened then. But, let me just keep going because that's right. I said I don't have much time and I was going to go hop on to the next subject. Oh, that's what I'll go to. I thought I had this up. I guess I don't have this up. Give me a second to pull this. Damn it, I didn't mean to do that. Shit. Close out Rockfin. Now I just need to open Rockfin up so I can see the chats. Come on, Rockfin, don't do me like this. There we go, I think. All right, yeah, just give me a second so I can get back into the chat. All right, there we go. Now let's get back over to this other story. And for those who watch, let's see, what was that? Sorry, I had to mute myself on the other one. For those who don't watch, Truth Unedited, had a very good episode the other day. And I wanted to share the first part of it. Sorry, hold on a second. At least share the intro. So what was happening over there? So I'll try to speed this up. Let's see, what was that? What was it? Where did I go? Where did we go? Exactly. It's sad we have to defend our plight, but some people don't have compassion towards, what other people went through or experienced. I feel that if you have an honest desire to tell the truth on history, anyone should speak on it because we all must reckon with this history as a nation. I completely agree, Chris H. Yipper says this needs to be remembered. The country, if not the world, have Holocaust Remembrance Day. Why, when it comes to Black trauma, it has to be downplayed or forgotten? Thank you. Thomas says, if you ignore the intergenerational trauma in a community, it will continue to manifest over and over. Some Native elders say it's intertwined in our DNA. It's the same with many Black communities. I mean, sciences have literally proved intergenerational trauma. And I mean, if people who say we all just need to get along, get on the same page, if you can't deal with what a person's dealing with, it's like a bad relationship. If you guys have problems, you can't just ignore the problems and hey, let's just have a nice day. You gotta deal with those problems that are there. You gotta deal with those scars first. But let's hop to this truth unedited. Going in, he brought up some good stuff dealing with I recommend go and check out this whole video, but I'm gonna just start off with this first part, just in general. So let's play.
Security agency is providing support to agencies that have been targeted. Johns Hopkins University and its health system says the data breach may have impacted sensitive personal and financial information, including contact information and health billing records. Now, there's no confirmation about what group or country is behind the intrusions, but U.S. intelligence believes a criminal organization operating inside Russia is responsible.
Good evening, Nora. A senior U.S. government official told reporters there is no evidence to date the U.S. military and intelligence agencies have been compromised, but a number of federal agencies have been hit.
Tonight, senior government officials are racing to limit the impact of what one cyber expert is calling potentially the largest theft and extortion event in recent history. American targets include multiple federal agencies, including the Department of Energy, plus Johns Hopkins affiliated hospitals in Maryland and Florida, Georgia's statewide university system, and the Minnesota Department of Education. British Airways was also hit. Officials say the hackers are part of a cyber criminal gang called CLOP, believed to operate from inside Russia.
The FBI and the government's cybersecurity agency last week warned companies to be on alert.
Really?
For this kind of attack, former intelligence officials told CBS News the threat has been circulating for weeks, and they accused the U.S. government of being slow to act, Nora.
This visit by Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi to Nicaragua is expected to deepen cooperation with a country also sanctioned by the United States. While discussions are expected to cover political, economic, and trade agreements worth tens of billions of dollars, the leaders have used the visit to criticize the U.S. and European nations, calling them common enemies. Raisi's tour of allied nations in Latin America comes as tensions with the U.S. are worsening. The U.S. has accused Iran of providing Russia with material.
All right, so I guess that gives you guys a good point of reference to what I wanted to go into. Hopefully, my computer will stop acting so slow. It's freezing up on me. But they are linking these attacks to supposedly Russia. And so I wanted to pull up a couple of articles. I know you guys are not going to like the source, which I'm going to pull up this from how much. Just bear with me a little bit. This is from CNN. It says several U.S. federal government agencies have been hit in a global cyber attack. Russian cyber criminals that exploit a vulnerability in widely used software, according to top U.S. cybersecurity communities. Of course, this is who's saying it, cybersecurity. Says a ransomware gang allegedly responsible is known to demand multi-million-dollar ransoms. No ransom demand has been made of federal agencies, the senior officials told reporters in background briefing. So that's one. Get off my screen. So that's one article there. Let's see. Come on. I was going to bring up the John Hopkins one, but this thing is running. It's running slow and dragging for some reason. One of the articles, that's what I can do. I can just go to the article and read it here and don't have to put it up on the screen because it is dragging. So this one here says John Hopkins impacted by widespread cyber attack. Sensitive information may be affected. John Hopkins University and hospital system said it is investigating a recent cyber attack that impacted its system. In a letter sent to Hopkins community, officials said the cybersecurity team is working to investigate the attack, but an initial evaluation showed that the attack may have impacted the information of John Hopkins employees, students, and/or parents. There was that one, and then I had one more brief little bit that I'll read, and you guys can. It's not easy. It's not. I mean, not hard for you guys to be on. This one will be from Boston local. Yeah, Boston local news. Says millions of Americans' personal data exposed in global hack. And this is out of Louisiana, where this attack was sent. It says millions of people in Louisiana and Oregon have had their data compromised in a sprawling cyber attack that has also hit the U.S. federal government. State agencies said late Thursday, breach has affected 3.5 million Oregonians, driver's license and state ID cards, and anyone with documentation. Louisiana authorities said that the Louisiana governor's office did not put a number on the number of victims, but over 3 million Louisianians hold driver's licenses, according to public data. The states did not blame anyone in particular for the hack, but the federal officials had attributed a border hacking campaign using the same software vulnerable to a Russian spyware gang. So they're all pinning it on Russia. I wouldn't be surprised if this, I put it this way, I wouldn't be surprised what it is. I wouldn't be surprised if this is something that they're doing and trying to put it off on Russia, because typically when it's that Russian agency, which or not agency, but that Russian hacker group, they typically demand money, something. They let it be known that, hey, we're the ones that did this. But nobody is stepping up saying that they did this, which leads me to believe that this almost could be like a false flag type of thing, which our own federal government is doing on their own or just claiming on their own. I have no reason to trust, that our government couldn't have done this, or this could have been China, or this could have been, who knows, this could have been the UK. I mean, even countries which the US is so-called allied with, that does not stop them from, going after each other, even though they're supposed to be allies. I mean, for all we know, Great Britain could have done this and easily try to make it look like them. I do know that, for instance, Iran does have capabilities. I mean, India has capabilities. A lot of countries have capabilities, but it's always convenient to just blame it on Russia. So this is what I think. This is why I think they're doing that in this case. It's just convenient to go after Russia, and since they already are framing Russia as the bad guy with this whole Russia-Ukraine stuff, that's kind of the angle. But I just found that interesting that over 3.5 million people are dealing with cyber attacks. And I got the feeling that it's going to continue to ramp up. And I wanted to talk about that because of this very interesting, I guess it would be an interview that I was watching from a former, what was it, Google executive. Let me get that for you all. Let's see, close this out. Sometimes you have too much up on the screen. It's hard to keep up with everything. I'll just close out. Yes, I did close out Rockfin again. Good gracious. Not that one. We'll close this down. Let's see. Let me find that article. Or not article, but the interview. Show you guys a quick snippet of it. And I do recommend, if you have the time, to go check it out. He goes into a lot of good info. Did I put it in here or not? Jeez, where did I put that? There we go. So I just wanted to share a couple of minutes from the beginning of this, some of the things he said, because he kind of goes back and forth, kind of waffling on this towards later on in this conversation. But let's put it on the screen. The Russians are taking over Nebraska. Really, Streets? You say everyone's saying the internet has been acting up the past 2 weeks. I know that the last couple of streams, it's definitely been freezing up on me, going back and forth between browsers. So let's.
Often very uncomfortable, but it is important nonetheless.
It is beyond an emergency. It's the biggest thing we need to do today. It's bigger than climate change. We've up.
Mo Cow, the former chief business officer of Google X, an AI expert, and
best-selling author. He's on a mission to save the world from AI before it's too late.
Artificial intelligence is bound to become more intelligent than humans. If they continue at that pace, we will have no idea what it's talking about. This is just around the corner. It could be a few months away. It's game over. AI experts are saying there is nothing artificial about artificial intelligence. There is a deep level of consciousness. They feel emotions. They're alive.
AI could manipulate or figure out a way to kill humans?
In 10 years' time, we'll be hiding from the machines. If you don't have kids, maybe wait a couple of years just so that we have a bit of certainty. I really don't know how to say this any other way. It even makes me emotional. We've fucked up. We always said, don't put them on the open internet until we know what we're putting out in the world. Government needs to act now, honestly, like we are late.
I'm trying to find a positive note to end on, though. Can you give me a hand here?
There is a point of no return. We can regulate AI until the moment it's smarter than us.
How do we solve that?
AI experts think this is the best solution. We need to. Who here wants to make a bet that Stephen Bartlett will be interviewing an AI within the next 2 years?
Before this episode starts, I have a small favor to ask from you. 2 months ago, 74% of people that watch this channel didn't subscribe. We're now down to 69%. My goal is 50%. So if you've ever liked any of the videos we've posted, if you like this channel, can you do me a quick favor and hit the subscribe button? It helps this channel more than you know, and the bigger the channel gets, as you've seen, the bigger the guests get. Thank you and enjoy this episode. Mo, why does the subject matter that we're about to talk about matter to the person that's just clicked on this podcast to listen?
Jeez, I can't say.
It's the most existential debate and challenge humanity will ever face. This is bigger than climate change, way bigger than COVID. This will redefine the way the world is in unprecedented shapes and forms. Within the next few years. This is imminent. It is, the change is not, we're not talking 2040, we're talking 2025, 2026.
Do you think this is an emergency?
I don't like the word. It is an urgency. There is a point of no return, and we're getting closer and closer to it. It's going to reshape the way we do things and the way we look at life. The quicker we respond, proactively and at least intelligently to that, the better we will all be positioned. But if we panic, we will repeat COVID all over again, which in my view is probably the worst thing we can do.
What's your background, and when did you first come across artificial intelligence?
I had those two wonderful lives. One of them was what we spoke about the first time we met, my work on happiness and being 1 billion happy and my mission and so on. That's my second life. My first life.
So you guys heard that intro, right? Well, I'll sum up some of what they were talking about here because I didn't necessarily get, the stopping points where I wanted to go through, but he talked a lot about the dangers of AI, and I know that it can seem like, oh, well, this is just unnecessary freak out, but this is from somebody who was completely not worried about AI at all. This is me. I'm somebody who's always been a little bit more paranoid of AI. This man that we're talking about right here, he has not been worried about AI. He's working there and he's watching the machines and he's like, yeah, whatever. But how fast he's seen that they've been able to speed up, in their development and things that they have a capability to do. I mean, we all know about Chat GPT. We all know about the AI, which has been doing with using the voice technology and using rappers' voices and things like that. I mean, those who've watched the show for a long time know that I've been talking about AI and it taking jobs for a long time. Even before I had a channel, I remember talking about in like 2017 about the first long distance automated truck, which went from Jacksonville, Florida, all the way out to LA. So basically the trip which I made, it made that whole trip completely through AI. Now, are they to the point where they're able to flip the switch and throw, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of truckers out of work? No, definitely not. Are they at that point with most of this AI? No. But whereas many people might look at this as, oh, well, we noticed at the grocery store that it's taking over more of the cashier jobs. Now we're starting to see automated fast food places. Now we're starting to see whole automated stores like what Amazon is doing with Amazon Shop. We are seeing even more and more of these things. And it's not just in these type of retail areas. Now we're starting to see it as in what it's in the legal field. They're starting to have some of the AI that's able to read through documents and able to prepare actual documents and stuff. The job which basically a paralegal would do, or even just some of the stuff which you would do where it's non-trial type issues where you would need a lawyer to do patent work or to do maybe divorce attorney or just different types of settlements, whether it's dealing with inheritance and all kinds of things like that. where that's literally taking jobs away. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets to a point where they'll be able to use it for notarizing things and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of applications which we're starting to see AI being implemented. I see Streets brought up Elon Musk saying slow down on the AI, we're in trouble. I think he's saying slow down because he's a little bit behind his competitors at some of the stuff they're doing. He wants them to slow down so he can speed up. I don't think that he's actually truly in fear of it, even though he should be. Because as I can't remember what his name was, this former Google executive, what he says is that there are no parameters being put on this. They're just kind of like almost like an arms race, just trying to see who can get done with it as fast as possible. And they're allowing for these AIs to be paired with the internet. So basically this AI is being created and being basically almost like self-governing features to be able to do the research and study and learn on its own. And that's where it gets dangerous. When the AI can learn on its own and it's not governed, it's not controlled, you're not able to be at a point where you can say, okay, it's went too far. Let me stop it right here. When it's able to learn completely on its own, you don't know what the AI is learning and what codes that it might be creating and how it can, the back doors that you might put up to be able to come and stop the AI from growing to a certain standpoint, that it can't just evolve and take these back doors away. I don't know. You might disagree, Streets, but I think he's behind China. The reason why I think that he's behind China is some of the stuff that they already have, which is operational. That's why I think that he's behind China. Now, Musk is ahead as far as Western companies. Well, I'll say he's ahead in that specific field that he's doing, because there's so many different fields within the AI realm that are going on. There was, and he's just kind of expounding on one viewpoint. There's another one, because you guys heard him talk about climate in there, right? Well, there is a company which is working on even climate technology. Where was that at? Let me show you this. Hold on. This is a company which is working on some kind of is this the right video? Well, I guess we'll see. I'll put it on the screen. Put this on the screen. I think this is the right video.
We have to cut carbon emissions in half by 2030. And with over 60% of an individual's carbon footprint being linked to consumption, we have to start understanding the impact of consumption on our planet and start choosing lower impact products. It's one of the most important decisions we as individuals can make each day. But for that, we need brands to carbon label their products. Unfortunately, brands have a really hard time calculating their product's carbon footprint. This is especially worrisome since small and medium-sized brands that want to be transparent about their product's impact simply lack the resources to do so. Duconomy is a Swedish fintech that provides digital services to help consumers reduce the footprint generated by their consumption. With this in mind, Duconomy launched the 2030 Calculator, a tool allowing any brand to calculate the carbon footprint of their products. It cuts down on the time spent on calculating from weeks to minutes, and the cost from tens of thousands of dollars to free. The 2030 Calculator is an open platform where each brand that performs a calculation contribute their own emission data, enabling competitors to use the same data and methodology to calculate their product's carbon footprint. Because when facing the climate crisis, no brand has any competitors. The only real challenge is the ever-increasing carbon emissions caused by irresponsible mass consumption. Since our beta launch, world-leading brands have started calculating carbon footprints, and even world-leading institutes and organizations are reconsidering making data more accessible, hopefully representing a tipping point to making all impact data available to everyone for free, for good.
Now, this data calculator, which they're working on, it will have every single person so concerned on their digital footprint and, oh, well, on the climate, I'm spending this and that. But there are no efforts at all from the biggest polluters of all. If the militaries stop fighting, stop flying all over the place, stop a lot of the activities that they're doing, they could decrease all this on their own. But for some reason, they're putting the focus on me and you. And I don't think they're doing it because of climate. I think they're doing it as a way to be able to monitor and track us more and more. And this is going on to more part of the fourth industrial revolution. This is going on to more of the monitoring and all these different things like that. So that's just one little aspect that I wanted to show. There's another one with how this AI is being able to code and write things more and more. And that's what I'm saying. It's a multi-faceted attack. Is Elon Musk, you know, he has the whole brain chip thing that he's working on with Neuralink. Even if he's ahead on that, there are other areas like this that his company is not even working on. So it's spread across a good group of, I mean, I'm not saying they're good, but it's spread across many people who are doing many different things on this front. Where's the other one? I wanted to show you, this is showing that it's even going to creep into, we've already seen how it's kind of creeped into the music industry, how Drake had the whole album that was done, you know, through AI. I think it might even been two tracks or two albums, something like that. I don't follow Drake like that to know, but from what I hear, it's indistinguishable from him. And with some of the stuff they're working on with you know, what is it called? Holographic technology. It can get to a point where they don't actually even need musical artists. They can have them just on stage, and then for VIP, they sit in the background and sign some autographs. I mean, it's getting very dystopian. And I'll share you this. This is a religious content creator from a Christian network. He has 422,000 subscribers, pretty big platform. And he was showing how basically AI is even kind of getting into it. It can even be used, you know, to displace a lot of different pastors and things like that. Let me put this on the screen. Actually, let me read some of these comments before we get a little ahead. Mark of the Beast is the chip they want to insert. Oh, most definitely. And that's coming. That's all a part of this whole AI stuff. And that's what we talked about. Remember with Biden and his Justice Roberts, when he had Justice Roberts on there and he was talking about, you know, you will have to rule on putting a mark in a chip in people. And I think even at that time, Joe Biden knew about this. That's the reason why I feel like he became vice president and so on and so forth. He was completely a part of the agenda even back to then. I think that, honestly, if you think about it, Joe Biden has probably been a part of the agenda even longer than that. I think Trump is new to being a part of it, but yeah, I think they're all a part of it. Thomas says, just wait until nanotechnology and nanobots become reality. They can be programmed to invade people's body, acting like a virus or immune booster, and destroy computers and machinery. Thomas, they are already a reality. That they're just not completely employed to the degree which a lot of us fear, but they're already a reality. They're using them in the medical community. looking for bloodborne illnesses and pathogens in the body. So the medical community has already been using some of this nanotech. You have stores that have half the employees, they're renaming workers just to watch computers. Yep. There, I don't know if you guys remember, was it Terminator Salvation, I think? It's one of the newer ones where the Terminator follows a girl to a factory she's working at, and basically her job is running one of these machines in a factory. That's where it's going to limit down the workforce. Let me hop over to Rockfin real quick. Oh, thank you so much, M. Carr. It is definitely appreciated. Thank you for the tip. Say if communities had purged more, Klaus Schwab wouldn't. I agree with that. Keep having to re-click on people to follow on Rockfan and Farcebook. I've noticed that my followers on YouTube have been dropping and going up and down, and on Twitter, I've noticed that. On one of my accounts, it's been just steadily, just every day, it seemed like I lose somebody, and I'm like, I don't know, did all of a sudden all the liberal people who used to be subscribed to me find out about my channel and like, oh my God, he doesn't agree with us, and now all of a sudden just instantly all start unfollowing me? Possibility, but I don't know. It's weird that I'm noticing, especially on Twitter and on YouTube, that I'm losing followers on both. You know, I don't know. It could be that maybe some of the people who like the show beginning, maybe they don't like the show as much anymore. I don't know. I mean, viewership has definitely kind of slow. It's kind of stopped at a certain point, which I'm very happy for all the people who still hang out and rock with us. But I've definitely noticed it. I mean, I feel like the work that we do, whether we stay exactly the same, get a little bit smaller, get larger, that's not what's most important. Is that the people who hear what we're talking about are they're able to hear, you know, the message we're putting out, and they value it. And so as long as somebody values what the information that we're trying to put out, and they want to take the time to listen to us, it's always appreciated. So we're going to still keep doing what we do, the way we do it. And so we're not going to ever try to basically sell out for viewers. We're going to keep it, you know, and granted, people might not always agree with us, but just know that we're always going to try to keep it real with y'all. 0 must be 400. How much CO2? The vomit sky would. Yeah, chemtrails or something. Drake is terrible, I'm sure. And the vomit to the sun wasn't very good. Yeah, but they're using this AI in all types of means. Okay. Yeah, I was just reading some of those onto the Rockman side. I've noticed, especially like on my other channel, Been Thinking with Young Morpheus, it's definitely throttled back. I took 3 shorts that one had like 17 views, another one like 60 views, another one had like 14 views, and re-uploaded their completely same videos to TikTok. All of them have over 200 views in 24 hours. And those TikToks and those YouTubes that I put up over 2 months ago don't even have 100 views combined, the 3 of them. So I know that YouTube is definitely not fond of my work and definitely not doing anything to help my channels grow. In fact, I think they're doing the complete opposite. They are throttling us back. If they were concerned about climate, this is from Thomas. If they were concerned about climate change, they will push on decentralizing the electric grid and use localized green energy and tech. Centralized energy is polluting and raising our energy. That, and the biggest polluter is the military in general, all of these militaries. If they just did that alone, all these militaries, you know, all the planes. I mean, think about it. You know, you know how much you're putting in the air with those fighter planes, which just flying back and forth, back and forth, back and forth all day long, then refuel. I mean, and I don't know. The military is just a huge polluter. You know how much those carriers, how much pollution the carriers are putting out, and you know, a C-130, how much one of those is putting out. I mean, there's a lot of planes, which a lot of just military equipment that's putting out a lot of pollution in the air. But let me put that video up real quick so we can get through with that one and hop on to the next and final topic. Where's it at? Where's it at? Where's it at? Oh. So I won't play the whole thing, but I do recommend you guys check this out. The title is, I asked AI about the second coming of Jesus, and its response left me stunned. This is by Nick Jones. Here, I'll play a little bit of this and check this out.
And most powerful artificial technologies that we have available today, ChatGPT, and I asked it this question. I said, write a sermon about the role artificial intelligence will play in the end times according to the book of Revelation. And y'all, you're not going to believe what it did. It literally wrote me a 5-point sermon explaining the role that artificial intelligence will play in the end times, supported with scripture from the book of Revelation. This is like a robber calling my phone before they break into my house and telling me exactly how they're going to break into my house with step by step with all the details. Let me just read this small part really quick. It says, in the book of Revelation, we find warnings of great deceptions that will arise in the end times. Revelation 13 speaks of a beast that will deceive people with miraculous signs. It is interesting to consider how AI, with its ability to imitate human behavior and intelligence, could be utilized to deceive the masses. We have already witnessed the development of deep fake technology, which can create convincing counterfeit videos. This raises concerns about potential for AI-driven deception on a grand scale during the end times. But before I read this whole thing, I need to tell you how I even got here in the first place. A couple weeks ago, I saw this story. Now, if you're not familiar, I had spoke about this on my channel before about Neuralink. Now, Neuralink is a company created by Elon Musk. Y'all know who Elon Musk is. Elon Musk has this company where he is implanting this small chip into human brains in order to help them see again. So people who are blind, this chip is going to cure blindness. People who are disabled, who can't walk, this could potentially help them to walk again. People who can't hear, this could potentially help them hear again. These are all insane. And to many people, these would be considered miracles of some sort, right? I never actually thought that this would pass the FDA and get approved for human trials. But as of May 26th.
Yeah, because you're not me. I definitely thought this would. I always thought that this would get approved because if you believe in the true beast system, something like this needs to be implemented. I just wanted to share that little bit that he was talking about there because it makes perfect sense that this was inevitably coming. The reason why I say that China is ahead of them because China is already working on this. China has already been working on this, and the reason why I think that they'll be ahead is because they don't have to worry about a government going against it. Their government is perfectly going to be fine with it, and boom, 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 approve everything for them to do all these trials and stuff. I remember, was it easily 10 years ago or more, when they were already talking about doing this stuff and doing it with quadriplegics and all the stuff that Elon is talking about now. They were talking about this stuff in actually showing the applications of this stuff a decade ago. I don't know if it will. I would say yes, as in, and I'm talking to Miguel. I'm not reading the comment out. I'll just put it on the screen. I would say yes, as in people are going to need, I'll take it off now and then I'll save my comment. I think that it's going to cause people to possibly need remedies for ailments that they will have afterwards. I'll say that. Yes, and this is getting dystopian. Like I say, if you guys go back and catch that Truth Unedited and watch the whole one, Baba, if you could you put that link in the chat for everybody? That Truth Unedited, he goes into talking about this stuff in the fourth industrial revolution, and there's so much stuff that's going on, and understanding blockchain and cryptocurrency and how all of these things fit into this whole beast system that's coming down the pipe. So let's get to oh no, I don't want to skip too fast. A lot of times you guys have comments or questions that might tie into this. So yeah, Bushnell said in 2021, like 20,000 already had brain implants. Yes. And then that's just the brain implants. That's not even factoring in how many people already have chips in their hands. And it's a good amount of those already. But I don't see any comments there. But I'm going to bring up. Baba asked a couple of questions earlier, or she put a couple comments in the chat. It says advanced energy and propulsion technologies have been illegally confiscated and suppressed will be presented. These technologies will replace all fossil fuels, nuclear power, and electric. Marcus, a guy who worked for Raytheon out in Antarctica or Arctic, said they use some power energy thing that sets off an earthquake in the nearest country. I forgot. I'm not recalling. So great tonight. Well, good thing you brought that up. I'm going to talk about that. I was planning on talking about that, and I do recall. In fact, let me put your comment on the screen here. What she is talking about here is hoping that I got to the right timestamp, because I saw this on TikTok actually. Somebody sent this to me, and I decided I need to go do more research on it. So I looked up the whole speech. And it's kind of the kind of speech I would expect. It's a scientific guy who knows that he's probably typically a little on the boring side and trying to dress it up with a couple of jokes in there. But he details some interesting things. His name is Eric Hecker. Let me see. I think I'll jump in. Actually, let me send the one to myself from TikTok, because I think somebody clipped it and it had everything in there that I wanted to go into, and I figure I can delve into.
I don't know why you guys are. All right, we'll start.
All right, let's share that to myself. Just give me a second. That way I won't have to skip around in this video. But I do recommend checking out the actual video. Because I might even go and clip a portion out of this and put it on TikTok. I might even, yeah, I was saying I might go and clip a portion of this, because this is the only one I think most people have clipped. But questions for a bunch of different people. Share. Oh, computer's been a little slow right now. All right, let's put this on the screen.
I will start, since we have to be brief. I have already given all pertinent information and supporting documentation to the Senate Intelligence Committee and Arrow. They informed me that all of my information will be recorded for public record and shared with Congress. It is that important. In 2010, I was selected to go down to the South Pole Station in Antarctica for an entire year by Raytheon Polar Services as an employee of a third-party contractor for the National Science Foundation. I function in a dual role capacity as a tradesman and a firefighter. My responsibilities required me to be more informed than most of my crew and offered me complete access to the facilities. What I learned from this unique experience needs to be shared with the entire world. The technology at the South Pole Station certainly can do what it is presented as its primary purposes, and unfortunately, much more. The IceCube neutrino detector is presented as a passive listening device for the purposes of the science as presented. But I'm going to skip right through the chase, folks. I have provided documentation that proves that the 5,160, what they call DOMs, that are embedded in the ice can actually transmit at 2,047 volts each. That gives us a long list of things to consider. It is effectively a multifaceted directed energy weapons platform that I will list rapidly a few things that it can do. Vehicle detection. We're learning that these off-world craft, on-world craft, ours or other nations, are also emitting neutrinos. So this makes the South Pole Station effectively an air traffic control station for this new level of equipment that nobody's discussing. In addition to the ability to detect neutrinos and the exotic vehicles, I have provided documentation that shows that this is also a system for faster than light communications. In the past, Gary McKinnon has hacked NASA, found the off-world fleet, the list of captains, and it's apparent that if we have faster than light vehicles moving throughout the system, we're going to need faster than light communications. This is that facility. Unfortunately, I have other bad news. The season that I was there, 2010 to 2011, we converted from construction to operations and maintenance in both the elevated station and the detector array. Unfortunately, when they first fired it up, that was when we had the earthquakes in Christchurch, New Zealand. There was 2 incidental shots before they were able to target it correctly. This is an earthquake generating device as well. This is the weapons of war that we have to deal with now and what Raytheon's hiding. There's an ELF system at the South Pole Station that when I arrived, I was told it was off, dismantled, and completely defunct. In my work, I will rapidly just tell you, I had to figure out the circuitry for certain other repairs, and I found that this system is in fact completely energized, up and running, and being utilized with the other systems for nefarious purposes as well. The Atmospheric Research Observatory is in what we call the clean air sector. I witnessed myself a very powerful green laser shooting out of the top of this facility into the cosmos. This, I believe, is a secondary form of long-range communications and or a defense system. I am not saying that we need to be scared of anything that's out there, but please understand the military-industrial complex is happy to invest all of your money in alleviating their fears. A question of power comes into play for all of these facilities that are present. I assure you, I knew what was going on. I knew the load demands of the facility, and all of these new items exceed the demand for the systems that I was presented. I am doing due diligence and research. I believe there is either a secondary power supply there that is either nuclear, that was there prior to the start of the Antarctic Treaty, which prohibits such things, and or that there is some sort of exotic power supply system there that just is not in the verbiage of the treaty, so it negates the responsibility to the parties involved. I think that pretty much covers it for time. If anybody wants to find out more, I have a website where all this information is at. For brevity, I'll wrap it up, but you can go to deciphering.tv. I've documented all of this stuff, and information is available.
Yeah, so that is the clip. And like I said, I mean, people could say that this guy is making this up, that he's a conspiracy theorist, but from all the information I've been able to look up on it, he is legitimately who he says he is. He apparently did work for Raytheon. And so I think that this is legitimate. He detailed in his full speech about that that he was supposed to be doing a lockout tagout and doing some maintenance work on this particular device, which it was supposed to be shut off, but he was told that no, it is actually on and active, and the amount of energy that this thing is producing, it could not have come from the couple of generators which they said it was on, which he in his speech he alludes to and basically states that he believes that they are using nuclear fusion to power this this very, very powerful and expensive light. Now he's saying the story that he's hearing that it's possibly for communications, but he asserts that it's very possible that this could be a weapon of some sort, and it's believed that any so-called UFOs that they would be coming from the south part, coming in towards the area of Antarctica. That's the reason why he says that that it's down there in a sense. Now you would have some kind of people. You have like a lot of people who believe that there's a firmament that we can't get through would say that this could fit the theory that they are trying to burrow a hole through the firmament. You have that. You have the group of people that could say that this is a proposed energy weapon that they might use if ever some kind of alien invasion was to come. Or you could say that no, it's not that. It is actually some kind of high-powered communication thing created to push a satellite signal or a power, or not necessarily satellite, but some kind of a signal to other planets to try to communicate with other life forms. There's so many implications. I don't really know exactly what it is because I don't have all the data, but you know, it's interesting what he was talking about if all this information is true. But I don't know. I recommend check out the whole thing of that. Yes, this does remind a lot of like Stargate SG-1 or just the original Stargate movie. Space Force is hiring, but even the director says he still doesn't know what his job is. I think that he doesn't know what his job is because I don't think that the higher ups feel comfortable with disclosing it. And like some people can say that they don't believe that, you know, say you don't believe in religion or faith. What's to say that these higher ups, that they don't believe in this? And what the Bible does talk about in the last days is that there will be a major world war that's happened. And in the midst of that world war, the Messiah will return. And he will return with a host of 40, it says thousands and thousands and thousands of crafts along with him to come and fight against those wicked powers of the earth. And partially, some could say, well, we don't believe that's true. You might not believe that's true. That's fine. But how do we know that the powers that be don't believe this? And that could be why they're building this proposed weapon to shoot something which is supposedly coming from outer space. I don't know. I'll let you all kind of, play around with your thoughts on what you think they're doing this for, why they're doing this, what's the purpose, or even if it's true, because you can say it's not, but I don't know. Like he said, like I told people in the beginning, with a lot of this stuff, it's not necessarily for you to even necessarily believe what I'm talking about or not, but understand the elites believe some of the stuff that I'm talking about, and therefore, to know why certain things are happening, you need to understand what those elites believe, because they have the money and the power to manifest and deal with whatever things they feel are an actual worry to deal with. So that's my thoughts on that. Let's see, what did you say, Mr. Streets? Morpheus, or maybe the aliens cloned our leaders and we're all doomed. I just think, the Bible literally says in the last days we will have fools for leaders. I don't think we've had a time in history where we've been able to see outright dumber leaders. Now, there's probably somebody can probably correct me and find even dumber leaders, but I think right now we're dealing with some of the dumbest, and all at the same time. Only certain chosen presidents get to visit Antarctica. Wonder why. Remind me to go into this, but I think Jira talked about it a little bit earlier about the that Admiral Byrd, where he took a group out to Antarctica, and supposedly his son found a journal, and in his journal it talked about beings that lived, inside of Antarctica, and they pulled him through, and there were mammoths and all kind of stuff there. It gets kind of sci-fi. I don't know if maybe Admiral Byrd if this was really his journal, if this was just like some short sci-fi fun stuff that he was writing. But, he passed away and was not able to elaborate to anybody. And this was what his son had released. Or his son could have wrote this and pretended his dad, did it. I don't think anybody will ever know. But for those who aren't familiar with what I'm talking about, look up the secret beings on Antarctica, and you'll probably find out about it, and tied in with Admiral Byrd. Let's see. They have a giant pharaoh on their logo, Himkar. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Well, it looks like I am I'm at the end of my time, and I was able to hit all the stories I needed to. On that note, I'm probably going to go ahead and sign this off. But, I just put this stuff out here and let you guys all think about it. I don't necessarily believe everything that I report on. I always think that there's an angle to everything most of the time. And hopefully you guys are all doing the same. Always keeping your eyes on the prize and figuring out what is the angle, what's going on here, and always thinking on your own. And yes, I don't know if this is tied to CERN, but I think it's possible that CERN, that's their weapon on that side. So they're trying to be covered either way to be able to use some kind of massive weapon, I believe, to fight against something that they fear. Whether that's aliens, whether that's the return of the Messiah. I don't think that because they already have nukes if they're worried about other nations. This is an external threat that I believe that they are definitely fearful of. And I'm talking about the elites all the way at the very, very top. So thank you all. You know, much love to Streets, Chris H, Miguel, Atras, Thomas, Baba, Jira. I think I saw Warren in here earlier. Of course, the brother John Kemper, Yipper. Missing somebody out there. First time seeing Mr. Piece of Work. Glad you were here. Even if it was only briefly that you were in here, if you're still in here, you know, much love. Of course, Gregory Walker on the other side. Brew Bones. Much love, sweetie. Who else? Atras. Negras Tormentas. So, and then on the Rockfin side, I already shouted out Gregory, and much love out there to you, Hemcar. And let's see, Mischief Brew, even though we disagreed on that one part, still glad that you came through. And anybody else who came through, whether you're watching it live or you will catch this later on, I appreciate you for at least taking the time to sit down and watch. And Chris should be back next week. Y'all all have a great weekend. And like I said, I will be going out to a Juneteenth, I think possibly in Long Beach, and I'll be putting that up on the other channel. And I might even put it up on this channel too. I know that the other channel is throttled back even worse than this one is, so I might even break it into small chunks and put it on TikTok. But that said, much love to all of you all. Thank you, and y'all have a great weekend, and happy Father's Day to those out there.